Hello, it's Kester with MixTV for In the Mix magazine, and we're greenside at the lodge at Sea Island. Sea Island is part of the Barrier Islands located just off the coast of Georgia. And what better setting for our 2-day Scotch Whisky focus than this resort that's famed for its 5-star cuisine and its preeminence in golf. It seems like golf and Scotch Whisky just belong together. So let's get started. We are here in the summit room of the Cloister Resort on Sea Island. This room is famous for hosting the leaders of the industrial world for the G8 Summit. The Cloister carries an array of Scotch whisky, both blended and single malt. We now have an opportunity to talk to the food and beverage managers for this 5-star property and discuss how Scotch whisky is integrated into their programs. Let's meet our panel of distinguished guests.
Hi, I'm Mike Raven. I'm the editor of In the Mix magazine and media.
Hi, I'm Lauren Cousin. I'm the ambassador for William Grant & Sons, today representing the Balvenie and the Glenfiddich single malt Scotch whisky.
I'm Ryan Carrier. I am the beverage manager for Sea Island Resorts.
Jacob Gregg. I'm the sommelier at the George Room at the Cloister.
Representative Matt Coons. I'm the director of restaurants at the Lodge and Retreat.
I'm Ryan McLaughlin. I'm the sommelier at Tavola Restaurant at the Cloister.
Anthony Rico, director of restaurants at Cloister Beach Club.
I'm Guy Trapani. I'm the sommelier at the Colton Allison at the Lodge.
And I'm Wendy Dunlap, and I'm with William Grant & Sons National Accounts Manager.
And I'm Kester Chow with In the Mix magazine. What do you look for when it comes to selecting single malt scotches for your bar and lounge service?
Well, when we're looking to bring a new product in, or we're examining our lists as they stand, we rely on individuals who are at this table, first and foremost to help decide which direction and vision we want to have for the spirits in each outlet, and working hand in hand with the outlet managers as well. We take a guest first perspective, as what did they want, and then we go from there.
I find that when we're choosing products, particularly people have a lot of affinities for certain brands or certain lines of different scotches, and sometimes it's nice to have a varied assortment within those brands, whether it be, for instance, with the Balvenie having something like the single batch, and then also doing something like the Caribbean cask that they might not be familiar with. It might be on the newer side or something you don't see as much, but within that same realm of products that they're familiar with.
Guy, anything to throw in there?
No, I think we just have to make sure that when we're looking at single malt scotches, that we're looking at the entire region, and that we've got a good mix of product from the areas involved.
Yeah, so you gentlemen, you all know the 5 whisky regions in Scotland. Do you find that your consumers know that and they look for ones from all over the country with different flavour profiles?
No, I think by and large that's probably not the case, but if you look at the weight of the Scotch and the region that it's from, and that you do a good job of making the placements within each one of the regions, then I think you've done the job of making everything that is available to the guests.
Yeah, so you can guide them.
They do exist, but it's a small percentage of the Scotch drinkers out there. They may be aware of a Highlands because they drink a Highland Scotch, and they will drink other Highland Scotch because they figure it's going to be like the one they like, but not too without prompting either to venture out to some of the other areas.
I think it's a very personal decision that when someone's going to decide to drink Scotch, if they drink an Islay Scotch, then that's probably what their flavor profiles are going to be. And when writing a list and deciding what products are going to be behind your back bar, you have to look at what Guy was saying. You have to really, maybe I'm not going to carry that Islay Scotch, but I need to have at least an Islay Scotch there to really get those same flavor profiles.
Right.
Do you all find that having, the big boys, so to speak, but then also having discovery brands, so that when your guests are staying here at such a special place, that you're almost making their stay a little bit more special too, because they're going to be tasting something that they might not get back at home or haven't seen before. So you have that as a decision when you're looking at back bar too?
I think we absolutely love having unique products, especially things that you might not be able to experience somewhere else. We have a pretty unique environment here at Sea Island. It's kind of a one-of-a-kind place. And to have one-of-a-kind product is always something that I think we look for when purchasing products, as well as, trying to fit different price points. Not that we're going to purchase things because of price points, but having a mix of prices, especially with scotches, the prices have gone definitely on the upswing. They're not getting any cheaper lately. There's a lot of demand for scotch. So having things at prices that are comfortable for everyone, even in a luxury environment like this, I think is important to what we do in the Georgia Room.
All right. You have a question for Anthony to start.
Yes, Anthony, when you reach out for support, whether it's educational or promotional, do you rely on your in-house expertise, local distributor, or brand company?
I think mainly our in-house is where we truly rely on. A majority of that is us being able to select the people that we want as part of our team that have the beverage knowledge they need, so that we have a broad spectrum of training. When it comes to brands or local distributors, we do rely, slightly on those people to come in when we get brand specific about something in particular. But I really believe that our culture here is to really bring in the professionals that know from a broad picture, because our guests are not, when they're brand specific, they don't know why they pick that one brand of scotch, they pick that one brand of wine, so on and so forth. We need to be educated on the gamut rather than just specifically on one. When we're doing in-house training, that's when we'll bring in somebody like yourselves or somebody that knows specifically about one product to kind of enhance that experience amongst our people. But the majority relies on in-house for the hotel and Sea Island as a whole.
I can see that by the looks of your certifications. You pretty well handle all that. Ryan, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I agree with everything that Anthony said. I mean, for the most part, I find that Scotch lovers, they tend to gravitate in a certain direction. They might not know why they gravitate in that direction, just to echo what he said, but pretty much they have an affinity for a certain brand or a certain style. Sometimes new Scotch, you have someone who's just beginning to venture into the realm of Scotch, and we have various different Scotches to select from, and oftentimes we'll choose something, that depending on the type of barrel that it's been aged in or something to that effect to make it a little bit more approachable. But for the most part, it's us.
It's you guys making the decisions on what you.
It's us making the decisions, but a lot of it's dictated by the clientele themselves. Yeah. Scotch drinkers, being very particular, they pretty much know what they want when they walk through the door. It's really the chance to affect someone who hasn't really aligned themselves with one particular brand, where you can start to play around with them.
I think education is key, because you're all very well educated, and for your staff to be educated, that's very important, because if a consumer comes in and they know they like the Balvenie 12 or the Glenfiddich 12, if you can say to them, well, have you tried the 14 or the 15? And they say, no, I haven't. So you can tell them about that, and then they discover something new that day. It's a great experience for people. So I think it's key for everyone to be educated, and it's more kudos for you and your establishment if you can give the consumer that experience that they enjoy and say, wow, I tried this at Sea Island and I had my first ever Glenfiddich 15. It's great for everyone.
That's one of the best parts about the job, so to speak, is on the beverage side of things. Is for me, was always that play off what you said, is that introducing people to something new was always the favorite part of the job for me, is to make that memory. You will never forget that time you had that single malt scotch for the first time at Sea Island, in the Oak Room or in the River Bar or in the Georgia Room, and you'll share that with anybody you come. And next time you drink it, you got a story to tell.
Yes, that's right. It's there.
So that's a big part of it.
And it's the special little nuggets too, because all of these brands, not just Balvenie and Glenfiddich, but all of them have a story behind them, and everybody loves to hear a story, and especially wait staff and bartenders, that helps to engage. And if they say, "Did you know?" and have a one sentence to go behind it, it's just one of those things that people have that hook and they'll remember it, and it makes it a little bit more unique and special, other than it's aged in cherry oak and bourbon and kind of the the story behind it and how it got there. So,
and they like to show off to their friends next time they drink.
Yes.
Exactly. You're exactly right. It's like, hey, this I picked up this. Did you know? You know, everybody loves to be in the know.
Right.
All right. I think we have a yes.
Product knowledge and training has to be at the top of your agenda. And how do you educate your bartenders and waitstaff?
I think this is like a perfect question to segue right from our last question we had. I think here at Sea Island, we really want to stay on the forefront of the industry, and knowledge is power. And we really, at the education and training for our staff and our bartenders, it's definitely one on the first step of that. One of the things we do, I think we really promote our staff to go out and educate, be an educator for themselves. And then here at Sea Island, we do bartending training classes, weekly tastings. We sit down with staff, and one day we'll do a Scotch tasting, and we'll taste through a few of our Scotches that we carry behind our bars. Maybe next week we'll have a wine tasting. But really educating and sharing the stories for that stand behind those brand names, that they can go out on the floor behind the bar and then make that memory. I think that's absolutely what we do here. I think Brian, get into that.
I apologize.
Did you have anything to add?
No, I mean it's tasting through, it's educating them, providing them with material. That's the important part. Sometimes we bring in, whether it's Scotch or bourbon or something, we'll bring in an expert and we'll hold different classes so that they can really understand. We have a class coming up in September where we're going to have taste through Canadian whiskeys, bourbons, and Tennessee whiskeys, and then as well as Irish and Scotch, so that they can understand the variation that whiskey is in general, so that they can better guide and direct the guest. But they're not going to pick it up just by reading some material that you give them. They're not going to pick it up on their own. It's something that you have to provide for them.
Do you think a hands-on experience is the best, as opposed to having reading material and maybe a test afterwards or something of that nature?
It doesn't affect. I think that when you're in the service industry, these people pretty much they have to experience it anyways for themselves. And it's just the nature of the people that gravitate into this industry. They tend to be more hands-on people. That's why they're doing what they're doing. And if you provide them the opportunity to touch it, smell it, feel it, taste it, and then read about it, it seems to reinforce the material greatly.
Yes, and it's all combinations of the reading material. I don't know the percentages, but there's those percentages where people remember X amount % of what they read versus what they are told versus what they do.
Right.
You have to use all of those training techniques in combination.
I can give you an example. I can give you an example. I did a staff training in Denver Airport, and about a month later I was passing through again. I thought, I'll just go into this account. So I went back in, and this little old lady came up. She'd been at my training the month before, nearing retirement. She didn't recognise me, so I said, I'll have a Balvenie, please. What can you tell me about it? Family owned and handmade, she said proudly. I thought, you got it. She stuck with her.
She got one thing and stuck with her.
I was pleased.
She goes back to telling the story.
Something has to stay.
Yeah. You mentioned she said it very proudly.
She did.
Yeah.
She was very pleased.
That's back to what Ryan said. Knowledge is power.
Yep.
Knowledge is confidence. So the table side, when you know your stuff, you can project that on your guest and put your guest at ease. I'm in the presence.
It has to be done kind of quickly, like a quick elevator speech where you can't hover over the table and tell them the whole story about the weather and everything else. So
No, she should have
a little blurb about how it goes. Good.
I think when you look at everything that's lined up here, you're talking about nuances and flavors, and unless you're able to give that information to the employee by letting them experience it, it makes no sense to put it in paper and have them regurgitate facts. It's always best, and since we're in the wine industry too, it's the same thing. You have to be able to touch it, feel it, smell it.
Yeah. Telling someone it has the smell of currants and it is.
Doesn't do any good.
Well, even having that combination of the sensory where you say, okay, this particular tastes like a pear, so taste the pear and then nose the Scotch and then taste it, and you'll pick up those nuances. That helps also to remember when you're going to table or talking to a guest or something like that. But from an educational standpoint, one of the reasons that we put so much stock in our brand ambassadors like Lauren, we've got several for all of our brands that travel all over the country, because it does become this bond and this interaction, not only with management and wait staff and bar staff, but also with guests. And they remember it, and that's how we build brand loyalty too, which in turn helps all of our on-premise and off-premise accounts, feel more confident in selling the product.
I think we made a decision in the previous time here that we were going to take training in when we have the opportunity to utilize someone like Lauren, who is an expert on a specific product or a specific range of products. That's an awesome thing to do, but what we do with staff training, both in the bar side and also on the wine side, is it needs to come from us. It needs to come from the people who are there supporting that staff every day, day in and day out, so that when that person's gone, there's still a backbone of information and someone that they can rely on a daily basis, on a nightly basis, that is a little bit different when you just have someone coming in to do a training. So we try and make sure that, we are
that reinforces
that basis of the education comes from within,
yeah.
So that at the end of the day there is a support system and someone to rely on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a big investment for a place to have that, especially as many as you have in your level of expertise, whereas in smaller restaurants, usually the bar manager or whoever's doing it leaves it up to the expert goes, and it's kind of somewhat lost sometimes, whereas here you have a fantastic structure to hold everything inside. So thanks. It's a big point, the whole education thing. Appreciate that. Any other comments on that at all? Or? Okay.
Hey, Jacob, we're going to let you continue.
Fantastic.
If you can answer this question. It's glassware is always important to Scotch drinkers, and how do you serve it at the Cloister?
Well, I can speak to what we do in the Georgia room, but I'm sure we have lots of other opinions about how we serve things in different restaurants. What we do is we try and retain a unique identity in every restaurant, so we don't do something in Colton Alice and the same we do it in Georgia room. They have a completely different identity. But when we're working with Scotch, we have the luxury in the Georgia room to work with some really fantastic glassware. So we have everything from Riedel glassware that's style specific, whether it be Scotch or bourbon. We generally lean towards the bourbon glass. I think it's a really great glass for Scotch, and that's something we have available. But we also have Baccarat crystal. So when we serve someone a rocks glass of Scotch, it's in a beautiful handmade crystal glass that is second to none. So it's a luxury product, like an aged Scotch in beautiful glass that was quite literally designed for this purpose. Maybe it isn't the most ideal glass. What we have here is a fantastic glass for Scotch. But we definitely try and be specific with style. And maybe not all Scotches work best in every glass. So if we have a lot of experience with saying this particular Scotch. And in the Georgia room, maybe I really enjoy it out of the tequila glass from Riedel. Well, that wouldn't be very traditional, but maybe that's what we think is best. Maybe if it's a peatier, smokier style, and we really want to hone on that. Or maybe it's better to the guests, so we're able to really tailor it to a specific and a personal opinion, because we have so many different options, which is a great luxury to have.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very important. It's very personal whiskey in Scotch. You don't want to tell people what they're supposed to nose and what they're supposed to taste. It's personal to them. So that's why I always tell people, look, don't let me tell you what you're tasting. It's down to you. It's your nose, it's your palate. And similarly for the glass. I mean, this is a Glencairn glass specifically designed for nosing and tasting whiskey. But that's when you're getting hypercritical. For enjoying whiskey, a rocks glass is what everyone likes. This one focuses all the aromas up. That's why it's been patented next to the shape. But your average Scotch glass is a rocks glass, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But it's a personal experience. So if someone wants it in a tequila glass or a brandy bowl, why not? It's how you enjoy it. That's what I always say.
Yeah, we're really lucky to be so specific with what someone enjoys. It personally, we work with different shapes of ice, different sizes of ice, and whether it be water on the side, we can do different styles of mineral water. Or we can get very personal and very specific, which with Scotch and with lots of other beverages can be really important.
I would say, I've been in the beverage industry for a very long time, and although I know the specifics of this particular glass or wine glass or a snifter, the Scotch is a very, very masculine drink. And unfortunately, the proper glassware tends to be more feminine glass. I think throughout my entire career, I've noticed that Scotch drinkers, whether they're ourselves that know Scotch and know bourbon and know those masculine style drinks, will still drink it out of a rocks glass. I wouldn't go into a bar even if they had these. I would still drink it out of a rocks glass. There's something about the shape, the size of what you're holding, the fact that you can put larger ice cubes in there. 90% of people that drink Scotch will have some type of ice, whether it be a single ice cube, a large ice cube, a sphere, any of those things. You can't necessarily do that with this style of glassware. So I would say probably, even though we know what we know about beverage, the majority of what our market draws towards is that bucket glass that's multifaceted to use any way you drink it, if that makes any sense.
It does.
That's the heft.
And that's the weight.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
most commonly around the resort. That's
Yeah.
what you'll see. As Jacob touched on, they have the ability, the way that the restaurant is built to run, to do so. And they have the ability to really play and introduce our guests who may not normally see something like that because of society's norms to see the right way, so to speak. But it's when you get into the different outlets, you see it's slightly different. Just either for volume reasons or glass inventory reasons or whatever it may be.
You see a lot of people drinking it neat with water.
I find most of it neat
Do
with water on the side.
Okay,
Yeah.
that surprises me.
And I try to encourage that with maybe just a drop of water, possibly. And if you're going to do ice, please only allow me to put maybe 1 cube in. And I'm faced with a situation where someone orders it on the floor and they order a very nice single malt Scotch on the rocks. I will bring it out neat with the rocks on the side.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Try to encourage that.
It's a hot climate, so we have to accept that people like it that way. So if that's the way you enjoy it, fine. But you can explain to them it's all about education again. A dash of water at room temperature is going to open it out, more flavours, more aromas. The ice is going to close it down. And then once they push it, I don't know, they didn't get that. But if that's what people want to drink it, why not?
Yeah, I no longer cringe when somebody orders white wine with a side.
I always think that Scotch drinkers, they're so particular. Again, their brand allegiance and then also the way that they tend to drink it. Either they like it with no water, they like it with a drop of water, they like it with 1 ice cube, they like it doused with ice cubes. But Scotch drinkers are the only people I've ever experienced where they'll hand you their glass back and they want their second glass. They want their second pour back in the same glass with the same ice because it's been seasoned in their mind. And I don't see that with anything else, except for perhaps here and there with bourbon. But again, it's a whiskey. So, but Scotch drinkers just tend to be particular across the board.
A couple of y'all mentioned ice and the spheres, because that's something that's continuing to trend, across the U.S. and especially in national accounts. There's a lot of interest in cold draft and that type of thing. Are you guys actually doing the spheres here?
In the George Room we do.
Yeah. Okay.
We do spheres and king cubes, smaller square ice cubes, and then regular.
Hoshizaki.
Yeah, I don't know what the puck style
it's the crescent
Yeah.
style. It's a Hoshizaki crescent style ice.
Okay.
So I basically have 4 different choices for ice if somebody wanted it.
But the reaction when a sphere is
It's seen as luxury. It's
Yeah.
seen as something that's unique, and maybe it's not exactly unique because there are a lot of places doing this nowadays. You don't see that many. It's not every place that you go and it is offering you a choice of ice or a spherical ice cube.
Right.
So it still is that sense of luxury that we're going for.
Nobody wants to take the time to actually do
You have
it
to have
because a
someone
lot of it
dedicated to
is,
do it.
individual and putting them in the freezer or that type of thing.
Yeah, we have to keep up with it every night. It's
Right.
something that's a nightly closing thing that our person in the bar in the George Room does.
But it does make a difference in the presentation, and typically it's like, oh wow. I mean, you kind of see people light up when they get it because it is not easy to find. I mean, it's done more, but it's still.
Ryan, let's start with you on this question. As you know, the Mix magazine is focused on the on-premise hospitality business. Could you give our viewers some tips on the ways you promote single malt Scotch beverages?
Well, that would be something that's done per outlet. So in the Georgian room, the way that they promote it is very different because they don't have a bar where people actually sit down and there's a focal point. It's a fine dining luxury restaurant, so generally they're going into a restaurant environment and there's no bar to be seen. The service bar is completely hidden, but so they'll rely on menus or they'll rely on the staff themselves to promote it. Whereas in the River Bar, which hands down sells, the River Bar and the Oak Room sell the most amount of Scotch on property. And what you'll see is, with a mirrored background, is a cabinet basically that faces out to the guest with all the different Scotches, labels facing out, tiered as much as they could possibly make it because we keep collecting more Scotches, so it begins to get a little bit more cluttered, so they're always finding new interesting ways of rearranging it. But basically it's the labels facing out so that the guests, when they walk in, they can say, they'll ask the question and make eye contact with the bartender, and the bartender will say, well, we have, and they'll start to rattle off, but right away you can see the guest scanning for the brand that they're looking for. So in that case, it becomes a very visual way of promoting promoting Scotch. And another way to do it is through the usage of putting Scotch in cocktails. Although, generally blended whiskeys or blended Scotches tend to be what most people would put into a cocktail. But if you have something that's a cocktail that you can actually play into and promote certain flavors of a particular style, then you make a very wise, educated decision.
Just to add to that, fortunately our wine lists are fairly fluid. We print them almost every other day, change pages and everything else. So we're able to keep in that wine list, Scotch list, bourbon list, some specialty alcohols that we do have. So
if you brought in a new Scotch, you would have it on the list in a matter of a day or two.
Oh, yeah. We
available on the wine list so they can see.
Yeah, it's not like we have to rely on the print shop
right.
to change pages for.
Right.
So that's.
And we don't particularly promote any one spirit, wine, any alcohol specifically. We carry a wide breadth of all of them, of all gamut, spirits, beer, wine, and we make them available to our guests. So
don't try to push anything.
We don't necessarily push anything, but if you go into any of our bars with exclusive of Tavola, the Scotches are probably the most prominent on display because of the volume in which we carry it in particular.
Is there any use of Scotch flights or anything as such as that, or
it varies through the year?
Yeah.
Probably more so in the winter because it gets cooler and it's 100 degrees outside. In the summer, it's a little more difficult.
Would you offer like a taste of all the Balvenies maybe not in the fine restaurants, but maybe in the bars? You could offer a taste of all three for a sum of money.
The great thing is that we're not restrained by any corporate guidelines or anything. There's no one telling us that we can't do something. And
right.
Our main focus here is always going to be on the guest and what the guest wants. So
right.
Even though we might not advertise having a Dalwhinnie or Glenfiddich flight, if I have 4 of these products and you would like to taste them all,
right.
I mean, you obviously aren't probably going to have 2 ounces of all of them. That would be a little bit much. But we're happy to do that. We in the Jordan room, we can set up a cart, bring them out, talk about them, pour them table side, bring a whole presentation aspect to it. So we're really flexible into creating the experience that someone wants, as opposed to the experience that we want them to have. It depends what they want.
And the staff's encouraged to do something because it's one thing if it's on the menu. It's another thing if this is the staff making a memory. Right, we talked about earlier.
Right.
To have a bartender or a server say, I can see you're really into Scotches. Would you like to do a flight?
Right.
It's different than someone just ordering off a menu. It's service.
Yep.
And it's service at a high level. So
that's why I have so many 5 stars.
Yeah, we're fortunate that we can be creative, and if you've got that individual in your bar or in your restaurant that seems to be able to step up to the table and go just a little further, you allow them to have that flexibility, both from a Scotch or bourbon or wine perspective.
makes all the difference in the world.
Okay, I'm going to direct my final question to Wendy and Lynn. What do you see other on-premise accounts doing? Let me start.
Okay. With a lot of the accounts that I deal with, it's national accounts. So I'm dealing with multi units, everything from 50 to 1,000 locations. So unfortunately, they don't have quite the freedom that you all have. But one of the things that William Grant prides himself very much in is innovation. So we are always, which is part of the heart and soul of our company, is we are always looking for ways to take a brand or brands that sometimes get pigeonholed, and how do we break out of that and make it a little bit more creative? Like Ryan talked about Scotch cocktails. That's something that most people maybe wouldn't think about, but it's another way of getting folks that don't necessarily want to just drink Scotch by itself and bringing them into the franchise and starting them, especially women. So, some of the classic cocktails like Blood and Sand, or, being fun with it, like a Negroni that's now being done with a Scotch. So that's one way that we go about it. Some other ideas that we've talked about are things like actually going to corporate headquarters and hosting a happy hour at the corporate headquarters, so that we're bringing in not just the beverage buyer, but everybody else within the organization, because ultimately they're all going to be consumers and go out and look for the brands and kind of educate them a little bit. We've come up with a steak and stave, where what that is a stave from a barrel, where we're going to bring staves over from the distillery and actually give them to an account and let them use it as a presentation piece for like little small samples of different cuts of meat, and serve it with a particular Balvenie or Glenfiddich. So nobody else is doing that, and it's kind of this out-of-the-box thinking. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on the whiskey map? Because that's something that, was kind of old, but we've brought it back and done it in a unique way, I think.
Sorry, refresh my memory on whiskey.
This is mainly the independent on-premise accounts, but it's a whiskey map. So it's promoting the Scotch category. So what we're doing is we're actually going in, and we've introduced this with some of the national accounts too, where we have a brand ambassador that goes in, trains staff on it, but then this actual map, which almost looks like a menu, gets opened up for the guest, and they can sit down, and all of the scotches that are carried on that particular account's back bar are listed in quadrants. And within those quadrants, there's descriptions of taste and nose and all of that. So people they find one that they like, and they see everything else that might be in that same quadrant. So now it helps to increase their opportunity for tasting and what they may enjoy. And whether it be our brands or our competitors' brands, our big thing with this is that we want to educate people and get them into the Scotch franchise. So it's kind of a unique little thing that we're doing, and it goes hand in hand with our brand ambassadors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say flights. Flights are a great thing, whether it's one from each region, or just work your way through the Balvenie range, for example, 12, 14, 17, 21. And that's fun, it's a great experience for the consumer. And if the bartender knows about that, he can say, well, we don't normally do that, but why don't you try this one, this one, this one? And it's a learning experience, it's discovery, which is what we were saying earlier, the love. Also, I've written down food pairings. We do that. Food pairings perhaps is fun. It's becoming more and more popular. You know, just wine with food. Different scotches go well with different types of food. Perhaps a Balvenie single barrel 15 goes well with shellfish. Peated cask we've had with cheese, for example. So we just working our way through now food pairing. That's great fun. Also, the education is probably the main thing, but you have to make it fun. So we do master classes. We go into an account, and the consumers sit down and have a flight in front of them, and myself and one of my colleagues will educate them. But you have to make it fun as well, so it's memorable. So you can get the key messages across, but it's also fun. People have a great night out. Make it interactive. as we're going to do now. What was our toast again? Slange? Slange you are? Slange you are?
Thank you for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I know our viewers will find all this information very useful and informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.